inclusion or empowerment of the beneficiary in the whole process. Yeah. Often they get sidelined. That's a big one. It's a long sentence. It was actually clear the way you said it. I translated it into speak. Sorry. What's wrong with you? Okay. Well, we've got to pick one to start off with and see if we can get some kind of group thinking about how we can address it, examples from what we've been talking about. Where could we start off with? With the budget cuts, or what do you think? The supporting it? Budget cuts? That's, I think, a pretty common. Anyone here having their budget increased? Anyone? Okay. Okay, so I think we share that. So we'll talk about this whole thing about budget cuts. I would throw into that also, there's a kind of desperation to find this one bullet solution. You see this in the Commission. Well, what if we just do this, some kind of, then it'll all somehow work out. So there's this hunger to find this solution. But that's a pretty important topic. You're all facing budget cuts. I think everyone. Here's Spain, Cyprus, the UK. It's all. Even in Denmark, you're dealing with restrictions. You were saying, no, they're coming back. Yes, so we're all stuck with that. So we could talk about that. How's what we've been talking about? How that can be addressed specifically towards dealing with less money. Okay. And that's what we'll be talking about. So this is a sort of brainstorming time, and we're going to maybe should we go on the flip chart, yeah?
So maybe somebody else can write because I have to
okay.
wait.
You can make some notes to back
I'm
up.
writing, so, and I'm not a native speaker, maybe it's...
Oh, sure. You're going to do the flip chart first?
Can be, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Not the best. I haven't got teachers in English. If you're a teacher, you're brilliant. Flip chart writer, I'm not. So, yes, I
is there anyone who feels
is there anybody in this room who feels they would be better with
endowed
this pen?
for flip chart?
You get to control the agenda.
Indeed.
Yeah.
There is that. There is that. Yes. Yes, indeed.
Okay.
Element of control.
Well, it's an experiment. The idea is, what we're really trying to do is to get you guys to sit here and listen to all this stuff for a while, maybe ask a question or two, and then sort of wake up. Like, why are we sitting here? Why is any of this of any relevance to me? What will I do with this when I leave? You see? What I'm really trying to do here is to get you in a way that when you're walking out the door, you're thinking about all the stuff we've been talking about and how you can do something with it back home. That's really it. So one problem you all have is the lack of money being cut. So these things we've been talking about, so you as participants and the speakers here, some of the things we can deal with around the issue of dealing with less money.
I was just thinking, isn't it better to deal with, just change? Because lack of money is one issue, but you can have a change organization, a new managing director, and we can take the departure of opportunity. Instead of seeing it as a threat, seeing it as an opportunity, what kind of changes can you foresee?
So you're saying seeing budget cuts as an opportunity?
Seeing budget cuts as an opportunity.
As a change.
Seeing organizational change as an opportunity.
Okay.
Seeing change of direction as an opportunity.
Okay. It's a hard sell in some cases, but it's important. You would. Okay. Any?
It's also an opportunity of improving the quality evaluation.
Okay. So quality.
So to improve the efficiency of the public performance.
So not getting hung up just on the issue of cutting budgets, but how do we improve the quality, not just maintain it or accept a minimal loss, but actually do something better.
It's also an opportunity to streamline processes. So as a result, we become more efficient. We do it with less staff, and we do it only once. That's the method we have in Enfield. Do things only once. What we are also looking at is reducing staff, but in a managed way. So natural wastage, not recruiting new staff, but bringing in generic job descriptions so that staff can move around. So again,
multitasking.
Looking at in that context.
That's what you said, wasn't it? About
Well,
people coming.
Yeah. But that's because I'm not necessarily in favor of that. I think there has to be some level of generic skills, but I think you have to have a much targeted approach to recruitment. And employing people with particular skills in terms of the job at hand.
So mix and match,
Yeah.
like there was a presentation, proportionate and targeted.
Yeah.
So that's exactly what we're using. So some areas it's proportionate
But
and
it is a
others it's
dilemma, for
targeted.
instance, in a public service where the tradition for hiring and firing is not as easy because, for instance, now when we have a change in organization, I have some third-class business consultants. What to do with them, basically. So, then you have to think in terms of reorganizations or sort of changing the direction of what their work should be. I still think it's the right way to go about it because I think that's where efficiency comes in.
Well, you never say efficiency versus resilience, because the most efficient systems are not the most resilient, because it's the redundancy of the employees that allows them to be more adaptive. If you have maximum efficiency, like the old example saying, if you have a forest, these monoculture forests for paper production, they're the ones that are easiest to burn down because they have nothing but these trees of one type. And with a match and a magnifying lens, the whole thing can go. And it's the complexity of typology that's in it, which is technically redundant from an economist's point of view, but it creates more resilience. So there's a trade-off there. Like she wants to be able to swap them around. Like if you have nothing but very specialized people, it's like Darwinianism. If something changes in their specialization, it's not good. You need a balance.
And I'm also going to say, this is my perception of it, and it's also others' perception, but it's not the general view. I think. And this is the dilemma I think we're facing.
So I'm wondering, you said in your presentation that your contracts, you set them up in a way that they decrease over time, right? So you kind of like force yourself to come up with smart ideas. And you're also in a situation, as not being a bureaucrat, obviously from your talk, that you're possibly a bit more flexible in your options than most people here. So I would be interested to see like what are the things you consider in dealing with those contracts that you feel that evolve in value, and to what extent can other people in their own organization apply those principles?
Yeah, it was a challenge right from the start that people knew that we do it. So for example, some of the staff we had to have flexibility from that they hadn't been used to before. They would cover potentially more than one role or move themselves around into a different role within the organisation. Make no mistake, we did have to make some posts redundant, and that was fairly painful. But that was necessary to do that. But people sort of knew that was potentially going to happen to them. And then there's efficiencies in the other ways in which we do things. The transport's a big one, for example. That means we can save money that way as well. And then winning other contracts that support the cut that we've had in the main one from the local authority. So it's cross-subsidising the whole time across the business, so diversifying over time, that helped us as well, which in a local government you can't really do because you're not income generating, so, which makes it very difficult. For me it's about the commissioners, particularly in the UK, need to stop panicking and just stop for a minute. And what's happened is they tend, when I look at the budget cuts, they're done by an accountant, not a commissioner. Yeah? Whereas what I want is policy-led budgeting, not budget-led policy. I think we have to go back to policy-led. Like what are our priorities? You might have less money to spend on them, but they're the priorities.
My perception is that when you discuss about this, it's something like there's a sort of conception of the public administration that is a black box, rigid black box that can answer to the budget restrictions only externalizing the services. It's something like you have the perception that the public administration cannot be flexible, cannot change internally, but only for answering to the public needs in a restricted budget situation, can only effort with external services. It's a sort of a very rigid model, like the one that was discussed this morning, not to answer to social innovation, but stay rigid inside and trying to find external solution, but only external. And the risk is that the external solution will not change the internal problems. The internal problems will stay there. And so there is a big risk.
That's a very valid point, but we're not actually proposing internal rigidity and strictly using social innovation for solving these internal problems. Rather, the subject is social innovation, and one of the problems is budget cuts. So how can that come into that? But it's not saying that you don't deal with internal issues as well. At least I'm not aware I'm saying.
But I'm just thinking, I think the issue of recruitment of staff is quite important in this, because you have to create the right platform to provide an atmosphere for social innovation, of course. And that means you have to have a great mix of people, resources. And that could be different skills brought together in a combined effort. So this generic approach, there's an inbuilt danger. I know that that's not what you mean, but I'm just addressing it sort of to provoke, to say that you really have to look at the match of people that you bring into an organization, and you actually have to look at on conflict as positive. I mean, I had these business consultants, they were like 10 together, they were all prima donnas, salespeople, and just imagine, I mean, the turmoil I had getting them to work together, because they're total individualists and so on, but they also created something new. So you have to really look, you have to build your staff in a certain way.
We think that lack of money areas to develop new models of cooperation, especially with companies, enterprises, because sometimes the public administration love collaborate but with third sector, and we can't forget the companies, enterprises. I think that private companies, sorry.
Yeah, regular private companies, yeah.
I think that private companies are very important to develop plans to train young people in a way, or develop soft skills of young people. In this way, I think that it's very important to evaluate our plans, our actions with stakeholders. Yeah. New models of cooperation.
I'm just trying to.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to capture that. So this
New
is
models
about,
of cooperation.
so it's about new models of cooperation with both
Private
third
companies.
sector and by business. So by
Especially with private companies.
especially private companies, right?
Because
Okay.
sometimes we forget private companies when we are
Right.
working in
Okay.
public sector.
Okay.
And the need of
So not forgetting about private sector
Yes.
people is also part of some kind of
sometimes
solution.
there are big gaps between public administration and private companies. And we need to evaluate all our plans with stakeholders, because we have less money, we have less planning, we need that our plans will be effective.
Okay. So how is that evaluation built in?
So,
How do you evaluate? What's the mechanism? What's the method for
I
evaluation?
can put an example, by the way, with the local action plan of Yorktown. We are going to develop control groups with young people in order to see if our measures are effective or not.
So control groups is
Yes.
as an evaluative
Yes.
tool for all this stuff that we're
Yeah.
messing around with.
Yeah.
Another issue could be something innovative, but on the other side, that is to discuss public revenue. I mean, to intervene on the budget. And as far as restricted, you could target in a different way the revenues from, for example, private enterprises, and swap the revenues coming from the enterprises in exchange of, for example, disabled workers hired.
Like
We got-
tax reductions,
Yeah, we
things
got
like that.
the experiences in Italy where private enterprises pay less for example, local taxes
Yeah.
if they hire some disabled workers.
Yeah.
So you can intervene not much on the public expenses, in the public expenditure, but on the revenues, the private revenues coming to the public budget, so that the public budget is not equally imposed on the economic context, but it's sort of mixed and balanced in relation to the social responsibility of the local enterprises. And at the end, at the final evaluation, you can see that this is more effective because the the minor revenue is less than the expenditure, the public expenditure for maintaining the disabled people.
So voluntary budget reduction as a tool for achieving social impact.
Yeah, there's a sort of economic, in general, there is a positive impact because you save money for assisting that disadvantaged unemployed, but and you get less revenue, but it's only less of the public expenditure.
Right, you save more money than what you would have had to spend.
Yeah, yeah.
But are you doing it? Does it work?
Yeah, we got local experiences in Romania.
So basically you get more budget by
You get
employing-
less budget by that field that is social responsible because it hires disabled workers, and at the end that less revenue is always less than the public expenditure that you could pay for assisting that unemployed worker, because that unemployed worker then is hired, and so it's get paid by the enterprise.
In accounting terms, what he has is less income but more budget, actually, because he trades a portion of income for liability, and the liability outweighs the income, so you're actually having a larger budget with less income. In some cases, but I mean, that would be a solution. My intuition is that there are different. That wouldn't be the only one way to go. Otherwise, we would just happily slash our budgets and then we would be done.
Or it could be an experience in which you implement really the social responsibility of the firms.
So social responsibility, corporate social responsibility, activating that.
Well, what I've said is social responsibility and a voluntary budget reduction
And the private sector.
in the private sector.
Another way you're moving it out of the responsibility of the public service. What I found in what was being said earlier was an attitudinal shift. Now, because you talked about getting people who were panicking into moving into a different mental state. And a lot of it's moving people from a kind of state of mourning into an ambition. Because you're talking about, see it as an opportunity and so on, which sounds very optimistic, but it can be a hard sell in certain environments where people are taking it as a shock. Yeah? But you're shifting this, what can be seen as an assault or some kind of offensive loss or mourning, into a more proactive, more ambitious frame of mind.
Create intentions.
Yeah, but within the administration, because you're getting a budget cut, normally that's seen as a loss, a thing to regret or mourn. And then saying, well, no, but seeing it as an opportunity to move from a kind of a state of mourning, which is downbeat, into a state of ambition. How can we use these reforms to get better results?
I think important for that, this is not like a magic trick. I think important for this is that you also translate this new situation into different jobs. And we are talking about bureaucrats all the time, which I think is a very negative term.
Yeah.
But a lot of these people who are working in public services, they have a very large drive to help other people, and they're positive people, they want to contribute, but they are forced into a situation with all these rules, and it makes it very difficult to be flexible. And I think what your example shows, that if you allow them to
where I'm coming from, just to be clear, it's not about the bureaucrats. I often think very, very well intentioned. Don't forget the political dimension of this. So in Thurrock, for example, a quarter of our councillors are up for election every year. Every year in Thurrock, there's an election. That means these commissioners have to go into what's called purdah for at least a month of the year. It paralyses everything. Everything has to stop. You can't have a debate. So what we were upset about from the outside with the administrators was to say, when you had to make your budget decisions, they went to a dark room for 2 weeks, came back and went, ta-da! Whereas we have said, co-produce, more, we want to work more and more closely, and including the private sector is very important. We have very big companies in Thurrock, like Procter & Gamble, which make everything from washing up liquid, etc. And they have been very good at supporting people into work at no cost. And what we're saying to the community is, the bureaucrats and the local authorities, the place of last resort. Really don't necessarily need them. It's okay. There are community solutions from private industry, from social enterprises, etc. before you need to go to that route. So yeah, so the political side, and it's very different. Often we know the right thing that needs to be done as a community, but the politicians won't say yes to it, so the bureaucrats know it's right as well, they can say nothing, and it won't happen because the politicians want to get elected. Just your example of, you know, poverty decisions, difficult decisions that they know that cost them the election.
So go for a couple of minutes, seeing as last result.
Yeah.
Just a thing, yeah?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Well, I don't think it's that difficult to move people. I think it's the mindset, and I think that boils down very much down to leadership. Because I mean, you have to create meaning around the change that is about to happen. And I've just been in a situation like that where I'm losing some of my staff to they're being not dismissed, but they moved to this House of Commerce. And then I had to reorganize my organization and still create meaning around it. And immediately you have this, you feel this threat, and then, I mean, I think it fits very well. Then you sort of think, okay, what is the difference really? I mean, some of the things we are doing, if we just reverse it or convert it or just make a small minor adjustment, it's in reality the same. But we just do it in a different way. We sort of make a small alteration, and we actually also maintain the good spirit, and we also maintain the good qualifications that we have in place. And I think that's really very much what the job is about. So I think it's present everywhere, and I think, but where it's not present is because if management is not willing to actually work with change in this way. So if it's shown, for instance, that you're in shock, or if it's shown that you're paralyzed by the change, then nothing will happen. And then you have this position of your bureaucrat, because that will cycle down through the system. And I think that is also why I said, I mean, you have to create an environment of innovation that is a typical kind of, a particular kind of leadership and management, and very much trust-based, because your trial and error is quite important in this. I mean, you can't work with innovation if you don't allow for trial and error. You have to, and then you have to make small incremental steps, allowing for a part of your business or part of your section. Then you can try out little things and see, does it work, does it not work. So you can actually create. We have something we call day-to-day improvements, where we basically have, you know, like a box of ideas, and then you can sort of, okay, I like this idea, let's try it out, see if it works.
Like limited risk, like small changes, but trying.
Of course, because you also work within a system where there's no room for error, also depending on what kind of target group you're working with, things like that.
So, but leadership, you're really underlying the role of leadership for dealing with that, becoming very active and able to deal with change as opposed to paralyzed.
You have to set the seed. Yeah.
Another topic? I think we've done it for budget cuts. Yeah. Anything?
Okay,
Any
we
final
move on?
thoughts? Yeah.
Okay. Right, I'll go on to the next.
Okay. So I'll move back to the D. Another topic for us, yeah?
Yeah, the next topic is social innovation as opportunity for new jobs.
Opportunity for jobs.
Okay, that's good. So themselves being a means to employment. In Rennes, you've got, this is very significant, I don't know if you have the data in your head, but this is a big thing. You have a large amount of employment created in this.
It was one of the big issues, but the big solutions weren't found in relation to that.
Into social innovation. But the sector is fairly large. You have all these cooperatives and things like that, and it's a significant part of the employment. I can't remember the exact figures now, but that was one of the things that came out that was interesting. Also, it's a growing sector, sort of growing. Well, they have a lot of the cooperation that's going on there that takes place in this sector. Social innovation.
Oh, right, okay.
So she was saying like the existing jobs, like they have what's in like 14% of jobs in the social sector, but
but they want to go farther,
Yeah.
but they have problems. It would be interesting to listen to these problems.
Yes.
So 14%, that's a good chunk.
Sinon, c'est la question des modèles économiques en fait. C'est la réalisation des modèles économiques du système de job, entre autres la superficie. Et puis aussi pouvoir créer des activités qui génèrent de l'argent, qui peuvent permettre de financer. C'est très difficile de trouver les bons modèles.
So the existence of the existing economic models are the difficulty. In fact, they can help find jobs and create money to finance other activities, but at the same time it's quite difficult to make it last.
Because they rely a lot on subsidies, public subsidies.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is a threat. So this is a problem now.
Okay. So the sustainability of okay, that's a big one.
It's the same in Italy. I mean, it's very interesting to create jobs with through social innovation, but the problem is that financial sustainability. Then, because if you create social jobs, social workers, and then these are to be paid in a long time. So the problem is that you come back to the same problem. You come back to the public budget.
Yeah, they become secret civil servants.
Yeah.
But like Sorokla solution is because it's the company.
It is, but the difference there is because of the law in England, there's an enormous budget that the government has. I called our local administrators temporary custodians of the money given for disabled people. They're the administrators of that cash, but by law under the new Care Act, people are entitled to. So there is billions of pounds is there to be spent, and we are using that money because they get the budget themselves as individuals, even if they want it. So rather than service, they have £10,000 a year, which they can choose to spend with our company or a different company or whatever. So it's quite a unique model in some respects, and that was the way in which the business is built up.
So the beneficiary having the choice has a big impact on the sustainability.
Our model is based if we don't provide the right service, we go bust. And I think actually there's a great danger with some countries in Europe as well. If you go through this model of giving grants, you create dependency. And if it's not sustainable,
well, it becomes a covert extension of it.
The problem is to promote these social enterprises, subsidizing for enough time these enterprises, but also to sustain their autonomy in finding services or providing services in a market model.
So some of the social enterprises in England, there is recycling, there is furniture making, there is cafes that people run that make profit, and so often the state still has to supply a little bit of money to help support the people that they're working with, give them work, but most of it is coming from the income from their business. And those models seem quite successful.
But I think when we speak about social innovation for job creation, I think it's not necessarily about creating a job, but also what you are doing, like an employment service, for instance. I like very much the idea that the employment service doesn't just work with the job seekers. They go to the companies with business experts and support the companies into creating these jobs, existing companies. Last workshop we had was about how to work with local companies in order to help them identify their skills needs. Because small companies, SMEs, sometimes they didn't even think that actually they can improve if they hire someone who will do job A or B for them. But we need, if this is, I think, included into the service, the job centers or public employment services, this will help create jobs. This is another type of social innovation, not necessarily creating new companies. But
it's not already presented between job account managers in the Job Center Plus. Maybe in Job Center Plus systems you have these account managers that promote the workers and go to the big firms to create, to analyze the exigence, I don't know what to say.
So
big
job
firms and not
brokerage.
big firms.
Job brokerage.
Yeah.
Offering job brokerage. So finding the solutions work with. Enfield do that, we do it, I'm sure most people do it in some form. Different people have got different models of it, so I'm going to capture it as a sort of job brokerage
I think
services.
more than job brokerage, it's also skills, forecasting skills needs.
Okay.
This is another issue, different issue.
And it's not only brokerage. It's actually, I mean, job creation is more than that. I mean, first of all, large companies, they do the recruitment themselves. So you of course have key account managers to provide services. But I mean, in the Danish context, we consist mainly of SMEs. And that is where we see our growth coming from. So that is where our job creation base is. So you can actually see that as part of the growth strategy from the point of view of either local or regional activity. And what that means is that you should change your way as a public service of how you approach these companies. They're not interested in taking on people from the point of view of recruitment. They are interested in taking on people because they have a business need. So that changes and there's nothing necessarily new in it. It's just taking experiences from recruitment agencies and taking experiences from elsewhere and integrated in a service model or in a service delivery model.
So it's bringing together a range of services that will support a job. It doesn't matter if it's supporting the person to get a job or the employer to get a job, or that bit doesn't matter. It's about creating that job, and it may be that the employer hadn't even thought they had a job until they saw your staff and they thought, well, actually, we hadn't thought about that. So it's a holistic package.
And the add-on what we have done is that we also built them on network, because actually when we then do the match, we sort of encourage them to say, okay, if that company is expanding, please get in contact with us.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you can also reduce, when we are talking budget cuts, you can actually also get more from it if you actually engage and get this network of companies by involving the unemployed, if they got good services from us, to actually get in contact with us again, and that way you sort of...
It's a holistic package, isn't it?
So it's establishing relationships and networking.
That's the idea, to build on network and to build on continuation.
Because you must have some pretty heavy networking to do.
It's all about the network. But for us as well, there's an interesting thing that's happening with the budget cuts. As the population we serve have got less and less trust of authority, the Job Centre Plus is seen as an officer of the state, and seen as just wanting to get me off my benefits and stop me from passing my entitlement. So the socialisation and the opportunity here is if someone else comes up and does probably exactly the same job but has the different no uniform, and that they have greater success. So that's an interesting pattern that's developed. But I think that's fair to say, Michelle, is that people don't trust Job Centre Plus. The sort of people I'm talking about that are furthest away from them. Second generation unemployed, granddad never worked, dad never worked. When you're working with those young people, they're not going to go to Job Centre Plus, but they will go to someone that looks like a youth worker that uses your skills. So it's the combination of the two that makes the social universe.
I mean, it's incredibly difficult for Job Centre Pluses, or whatever they're called, employment services, whatever they're called across Europe. It's really challenging because those roles, as you've already described, are about to change. So, the philosophy of someone would sit at a desk and someone would come in and you'd have a whole range of things that you could give to somebody and say, off you go. That's gone, but that's still very much where people are with it. So it's about changing mindset. It comes back to that again. It's about a mindset shift about what that organisation is doing.
But it's also about design. I mean, for instance, I named my division Career Centre, for instance, and it's also about service delivery. We live together with one of the, unions, one of the trade unions for academics. So we have merged, we have a common reception, and although divided, but still common, and we have to create a dual profile within the same unit. So it's also service delivery basically becomes essential in this.
I think we just keep looking at the hard to reach before the point gets lost. The hard to reach ones and these kinds of alternative or new services, because you might have a traditional service and the kind of person who would get employment from that is probably someone who isn't so far from employment anyway, so they need a more minimal kind of help. Like if they have the wherewithal to go in, sort it out, get it, oh, that's the right one for me, then they're already on the way. So the particular suitability of social innovations for the hard to reach or this from, sort of the marketplaces, which are everywhere's different.
Well, back to the beginning, I agree with the people who say that grants are not a solution to support these jobs. It's clear. But I think that we need to search innovative solutions to support these jobs. And I think that the inclusion of social clauses in hiring procedures could be a good opportunity for social enterprises.
Social policies.
No, social clauses.
Social clauses, sorry.
Social clauses in hiring public procedures when we
Right,
hire some kind of service.
So clauses, yeah. Okay.
But also I think what you did
Yes,
when we came in Avilés
Yes.
workshop, all these young people who came, evaluated and criticized the job center and career guidance, and then they
No, but
proposed
I'm not
solutions.
talking
This is
about.
all.
No, I'm not
No,
talking
I know.
about.
I said these two, what you
Yes.
have done, introducing changes
Yes.
in the employment, in career guidance specialists and the employment center, etc.
Yes.
Through these receivers, let's say,
Yes.
users of the
Yeah,
service.
yes.
This is a kind of social innovation to reform this service,
Yes.
which it was not much
Yes.
money in the end.
Yes.
You are talking about social clauses in the public
In the
procurement.
public service.
This is
Yeah.
not a
For companies.
Yeah.
Because I think that local administration have a lot of hiring about.
Local administration can apply some specific regulations for themselves, for their own public procurement,
Yes.
deciding that for example, services with a minimum sum of money, to reserve
Yes.
these public services in the public procurement procedures only to, for example, social cooperatives. We
Or
do that.
giving extra points to people who
Yeah.
hire young people.
Another social
women,
clause is that
immigrants.
we
There are-
make public procurement for firms that guarantee the hiring of a minimum percentage of disadvantaged workers, for example.
That's quite
But
embedded
this
in
is
UK policy.
This is always a problem of expenditure. That my general
Yes, but
reflection
we-
is always that
Yes, but-
we are always dependent
Yes,
on
but
budget,
in fact-
restricted
yes,
or large.
yes, but in
It's
fact-
always the same.
But in fact, local administration hiring a lot of services.
Yeah,
And we,
sure.
They
if
buy
we
services, yeah.
spend a lot of money, we can spend that money in enterprises who are social. Or,
But he's got a point that if you're having less money to spend, that causes a problem for something based on spending money.
What we've been doing in Enfield recently is, we used to do it before, but we are now much more focused on it. Every planning application that comes through the door, we make sure we get something out of it. We make sure the jobs are for local people, there's some training, something there before we approve that planning application. Specifically, if it's a big planning application. The other thing that has happened more recently in Enfield is for two terms we had conservative in power, and then last term we had Labour in power. When the Conservatives were in power, they were not looking at certain things. Since the Labour came into power, and they're now into second term starting this May this year, we've had a massive, major regeneration schemes in the borough. And as a result, we in fact are working on a big scheme which is called the Meridian Waters Regeneration Scheme. It's going to create 3,000 new jobs, 5,000 new homes. So overall, we are working towards big inward investment strategies. And previously, I think we officers probably were not trained, but we now train much better how to negotiate when things are happening. So again, thinking out of the box all the time. Now, Enfield has a big homelessness budget, huge. And it's tried in different ways to reduce it, but it's found it difficult. So it's now started building council homes, which it never did before. Some years ago, we put all the council homes in the responsibility of social landlords. Okay, we transferred our stock to social landlords, so they could bring in external money and make these homes better, meet the standards. But we're doing that, but side by side, we've started building now small developments because we want to take care of our homeless budget. We want to reduce it because There's no other way we are able to reduce it. We've now created another arm's length organization to trade services. Before, we never used to think of bringing in income. We were always just paying for things. We're now looking at arm's length service, an organization which will be selling services, which will be actually bringing in an income. So, looking at different ways of doing it. We have a new assistant director who started working with us only June this year. And the first thing he said to us in my first meeting, I have a generic job description. Okay? Means today he's working with us, tomorrow he will be working with maybe another department as well. So again, trying to save costs. You talked about the value of specialist workers, but what Enfield is looking at is, yes, the value of specialist teams, specialist project managers, specialist skillful workforce, but at the same time it's looking at having certain generic people who move from, today there are 3 projects to be done in this department, work in that department for 6 months, then move to the next department. So it's again trying to manage resources in the limited budgets we have, but also target the statutory services. I'm not a statutory services. I could easily lose my job over the next 2 years when there are budget cuts. So one is trying to make sure that employment is key. Employment is key for people's well-being. And in Enfield we have a problem. We have a east and west divide. A10 is a big road. East of the borough, people are living less, just like you have in Borough. Child poverty is a major issue. Health inequalities is a big issue. Employment is a big issue. Crime is a big issue. So there are so many things happening on the east. So what we're looking at is a targeted approach and trying to work with our communities in different ways. So again, working with communities so that they actually feel part of the process, which wasn't happening before. Sorry.
No, that's what you were saying too about the stakeholders.
I've got a number of people, sorry, Neil, sorry, Oh, that's very, very kind of you, thank you.
A very quick point, just that all of us working in large organisations, do we employ the very people that we're talking about? Because we should do, because our experience in England as local government is they're the worst. You don't see very few wheelchair users, very few people with learning impairment, so there's something wrong there. Some of the apprenticeships we've run recently deliberately targeted the very people that you struggle to employ, do you know what I mean? So there's something about, as our own bureaucracy, you do have to look in your backyard yourself and say, that is
I'll set an example.
And I don't know whether it fits in here, but one thing I think I think you pointed at it. But that's the whole issue of if we get unemployed into work, what the savings of getting them into work. This on a sort of political level and strategic level, when we're talking about social innovation, perhaps also trying to, because I think in very few countries you actually make that calculus. That what are, from the society point of view, of reduction of costs. And that's also why when we talk about opportunity for jobs, to provide subsidized employment can also be part of the job creation strategy. Because because when you talk about SMEs, first and foremost, they can't afford the recruitment process. It's too expensive for them to choose the wrong candidate. And so if the job centers can assist them in the recruitment of relevant candidates, and they can begin with a subsidized employment period of 3 months. Not only can the company sort of assess, do I have a business opportunity here? Is it the right candidate I have? And at less cost. So there's also a competitive angle to this that can be debated. And from society point of view, if you do that calculus instead of 1 year of unemployment benefit or whatever, 3 months of subsidized employment, and then and on top perhaps job creation. So these kind of calculus, I think we need more of.
With Job Centre Plus in Britain, they will do this thing. If we approach them and say we're looking for a staff, what they will do is they work in partnership with the local college, and they've got a 10-day course on for people that have been unemployed for a certain length of time, training them in the things that we know, and then I just have the guarantee to give everybody who passes the course an interview and then select one of them for the job. And that works very well. And actually, the college funding that and the Job Centre Plus and then us coming in, it saves us money.
There's another question.
Your question?
Yes.
Yeah.
The question is, there was speaking about the opportunities for new jobs, but not only try to fit offer and demand, but also how to create new jobs. Really, how to create them.
Yeah.
So the question here is how to, in particular, people coming from universities with superior academic degrees, trying to make them find new jobs, and if they don't exist, how to create
New ones. This is the
So
central
that's
issue.
the
Yeah, very
challenge
much.
here. Any answers? That's the question.
Well, I would say what we're looking at here is exactly what we need to be working at with your graduates. You know, they will be people who will consider developing and creating their own companies, their own business. And I think, you know, if there is given some support to do that, they will have some fantastic ideas, I'm sure, of sort of creating and getting themselves into work.
But is it social innovation as well?
Yeah.
I mean, it's creation of enterprises. I mean, it's not
It's
very
a
different
subcategory. Yeah, but you could say social innovation in that sense is a subcategory of entrepreneurship in general, but it's a specific angle of that. Yeah. What is that? What makes a difference is you're talking about meeting needs that have so far not been met. Like, let's say I open a new restaurant. Other people have restaurants, and we compete and see my restaurant. But people already have restaurants. That's a thing that we, But some other thing that hasn't been met. Like we talked about here in Aveiro when I visited, they were interested in what to do because they had very long summer holidays here. And so the children, they sort of lose track of what they were learning and have to repeat and so on. So if they could have some way of them maintaining what they studied during the summer in some way that was also suitable for what you do in summer, right? And what would I don't know what that would be. That would be the innovation. That was the thing. We don't have the answer to it yet. But that would some kind of solution to that would be a good thing to have.
But I think what Michelle was saying is that ask these young people, maybe they have the idea, they know what they want to do, or at least they...
But the innovative aspect of it, I think, is one hand. I mean, if you start talking the languages of business in terms of, talking job creation, there's an innovative aspect of it. Also, what we train our candidates in university graduates, because they're not, when they have to address SMEs, they don't talk the same language. So basically, we work very much with universities graduates making the translation. How can they actually approach a company? Because we should not necessarily be the only one who approaches the company. The majority should be candidates themselves approaching the company. So we train them actually in building the business case together with the company to address their challenges and to offer themselves. They should not come and say, I have this and this and this degree. They should translate their skills into the needs of the company. So that is one way of working, for instance, with university graduates, because there's a lot of services they can deliver as a need. I mean, the carpenter himself, he's very good at doing carpentry, but he's very good in getting in contact with the companies. But he's perhaps not trained in running a business. We have a very good example, a scaffolding company in Denmark, which is one of the largest now, and he's become a multi-millionaire. He employed a historian at one point, and he told him, well, if there's not enough work for you at the staff center, then, well, you have to help with the scaffolding, basically. Now he's also owner of this company, and they have, and half of the administrative staff are university graduates, because he sees the advantages of actually employing university graduates. So this is this kind of idea of model we try to sort of integrate into sort of a targeted SME strategy.
I'd like to close in this hot day with thoughts from each of you, from each delegation of, these are not commitments, but the thoughts you might have to ideas for initiatives that you would take back home based on the things we've looked at and talked about today. Is that, who wants to go first? Who would have any thoughts about what they're thinking about doing? Because you're all thinking about doing, right? You're all doing focus.
Yeah, no, we've already thought about some
Well, tell us,
ideas.
share. I mean, what are the,
what particular ones?
There's so many.
just some salient idea to close the day.
Establishing young people in business.
Yeah, so So one of the concepts in Thurrock is young people think they have to work for someone else always. And actually, sitting here, we were talking a lot about, some of them are very entrepreneurial. So for example, we met a young woman